I think we're ready to begin.
She has the evidence.
Are there any public comments? If none, we can begin.
Good morning, Pastor Matias and members of the board. Today we have an instructional council update and two presentations. One, upon your request, addressing writing across the district. And the second one will be addressing International Baccalaureate at City, Middle, and High. And then finally, we discuss the interest of the board of being able to pose questions in regards to MSTEP. In October, we agreed that we would bring a formal presentation regarding MSTEP, but if there were preliminary questions, we thought that at the end of this agenda would be a great time to begin posing those questions. I remember you asking, what are schools doing about MSTEP? Are they studying? What are some of the strategies? And we have executive directors here who are prepared to answer any preliminary questions that you may have.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Good morning, board members.
Good morning. All right.
I'm Mulonge Kalumbula, just in case you forgot, but I think we've met before. I'm here to provide an update for the Instructional Council. Last year, Mrs. Reagan did a report, but she's retired and enjoying retirement. So,
She's retired before, though.
I don't know. I don't know. Just a quick update. On the 13th of August, we called a meeting with the council. There was an off-schedule meeting to update the council and them to look at a curriculum that we're proposing. We proposed to run this year at Southeast Career Pathways. And so that curriculum is acronymed JAG, or Jobs for Michigan Graduates program. It's a nationally and statewide known program it's been running for about 10 years, since 2008. And the main goal of the program, really the course, is to prepare our students who are at high risk to be career and college ready. But specifically, they work with industry experts to gain skills that can be employable when they finish high school with us. Now, looking at the data that has supported this program over time, it shows that many students who engage in this program have really matriculated and have gone on to graduate and also really gain employment upon graduation based on the experiences they've made in the network with the industry experts. So right now, our current pilot, like I said, is at Southeast Career Pathways, and Ms. Stephanie Davis, the principal there, is working with our partners to ensure this program runs smoothly as it is. And the council will receive an update on this program in the spring when we have actual experienced students have experienced it for some time. That's a pretty short update as to what we are working towards. And I think any questions you have, or we can move forward.
I'm wondering what career pathways are you doing with the students? So I'm assuming that these students are not completing their graduation requirements and then are an alternative.
Yeah, so students who are at Southeast Career Pathways are students that have not succeeded in other locations. So this space is really dedicated to helping them meet the credits they need to graduate. But also this course layers on to this. You know what, you can meet graduation credits that you need, but also going to give you skills when you leave here. By working through industry partners, you can be employable and actually really get a career of a job if that's what you choose to do. Or you can network and go to college if that's the option for you. So this is like another layer of support that our students who are at a high risk really need. So we are adding that additional support for them.
And just to clarify, it's my understanding that Southeast Career Pathways students are expected to meet graduation requirements, right?
Correct.
Yes. Okay.
So this isn't any specific career, it's just careers in general the skills that they need in order to be successful in a career.
Correct. So they
This is
get,
a course
The foundational-
that's available to the students at Southeast Career Pathways.
it is.
Okay.
Sounds good.
And do they get hands-on exposure to these industries, or how does that?
Yeah,
Is
so
it
the industry,
strictly
there are some
academic?
mentors in the field. So for example, if I'm interested in, say, engineering, so I would work with a mentor who is an engineer who actually does work in the field, so I can see how my coursework links to industry work. So really, I get an idea as to, do I really want to do this, and what do I need to do to get my skills up in school while I'm here as a student to gain work experience in the industry that I'm interested in. So, and right now we are again, partnering with mentors who are coming on board to be part of our support for our students as the program develops. Again, right now is a pilot that we are trying this year, and we are learn some data from it and go forward when our students are progressing through it.
How many kids are in it? How many kids are you taking in the pilot?
Right now, we're just about having a cohort of 30,
30, okay.
and I think Ms. Davis has figured out which students would be best suited for that cohort. Again, it's a way to say, you know what, we're gonna give you another support level that you need to give you a hands up in the industry and the work.
And then we are gonna get some more details of this, correct?
Yes, sir. So when we, right now there's a syllabi that has, what the course description is, what the course entails. But as the students use the content, experience the course, we can come back to the committee and share an update as to what has transpired since our initial inaugural day. Yes.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
It looks like we have human resources. Bilingual ESL staffing in particular.
Yes, did we give you the report?
Was it this?
Did you get
That's
the,
the
no.
writing thing.
Did you send
I
the
emailed it
recruit?
to you last week. Let me
Writing.
We had some data, but we can give it to you. And then forward you the email, the response afterwards. So I'm not sure if you all know Nick Swartz. Nick is our talent acquisition manager, and he does the majority of our recruiting and outreach for our positions.
We hang out in Big Rapids all the time.
So I'm going to turn it over to Nick. We weren't quite sure what the scope of what the request was, so we will go forward, and you have other questions and we need to follow up later, we will.
Okay.
Okay.
So the numbers that we pulled were our ESL teacher openings and fills, our bilingual, so the dual immersion program, our bilingual secretaries, and then our English learners paraprofessionals. Those are the numbers we pulled. So we've for this year we've hired 6 ESL teachers. As of last week, we still had 2 vacancies for ESL teachers. We've hired 2 bilingual teachers, and as of last week, we have 2 vacancies remaining.
So overall, that we had either 6 positions total we were trying to fill, or just 4 positions that we were trying to fill. So,
So yeah, so we filled roughly about 75% to 80 for those positions. And now for bilingual secretaries, that is an area that we've filled 2 of the 8.5 or 8.5 FTE bilingual secretaries. We still have about 6.5 bilingual vacancies. And then for the English learners program, for the paraprofessionals, so far we filled 1, and we do have 4 remaining in that area.
so we're having a more difficult time finding the support staff than we are actually the teaching staff.
Can you just real quick discuss the skills required to be ESL bilingual?
No.
So, I mean, I don't need, yeah, what is just the, so that way people
Might have
are
come
just
up
aware of
here.
the distinctions.
We
An
have the job
ESL
description, but
teacher
other than that-
needs the regular certification plus an ESL endorsement. A bilingual teacher would be, also have an ESL endorsement, but that teacher would be able to speak both languages, English and Spanish, or English and another language fluently. And that bilingual teacher is categorized bilingual because when they get that endorsement or certification, they need to show that they are perfectly literate and fluent in the second language other than English.
So, and then the bilingual positions are only positions that are designated at the high school, at the school that's like bilingual school, correct?
So usually the bilingual positions are for a school like Southwest Community
Okay,
Campus
okay.
that needs, that has the dual immersion, because from preschool on, they teach the two languages. And the other settings, you would need, depending upon the model, if it's an ESL model cultural center, you would need an ESL teacher. There are 3 schools that have the transitional model, which are Buchanan, Cesar Chavez, and Burton Elementary. At K1 and 2, there are teachers there that are bilingual and also have an ESL endorsement. So when
Okay.
you are bilingually endorsed, you also have that ESL component. As
So
part of
other than-
bilingual
Okay.
EL, you have to have that ESL.
So other than Southwest, the bilingual positions that we have are at those 3 schools.
Correct.
Okay, right. Right. And so that's. the-
Predominantly.
Yeah. the
That's not to
predominant,
say that we may not have somebody bilingual at Dickinson.
Okay, right,
There could be,
okay.
But they're not required to be.
but they're not required to be.
They would be required to
Right.
be
Right,
ESL
that's what I'm
endorsed.
saying. That's, I mean, in
Yes.
terms of positions, I'm not
That are-
saying,
right.
so I would imagine that there are more bilingual teachers in the district, but not teachers
For those
that are
positions, right,
Correct.
certified bilingual.
yes,
Teaching in certified bilingual positions.
positions, correct.
Okay, so there have been questions about why we don't have more bilingual teachers, and so I think that this is a good chance to discuss that. So we've had a board member who suggested that we should have more bilingual education, and I would imagine that it's more difficult to even hire that many bilingual teachers. Would that be true?
Yeah, that'd be correct.
It would be almost impossible if we had I mean, as you can see now, we've been searching for, I mean, we constantly are searching for bilingual staff, and we never are 100% full,
Okay.
so.
And when you're bilingual and you teach in a cultural center, you still have to have that ESL endorsement
Okay.
or sign up to get it.
And we have more teachers that we are, and we will help you get the ESL endorsement too, if it's required.
There are many opportunities for that.
many.
Many universities are not offering that endorsement, and we want teachers to sign up for that endorsement.
And how are you working with the teacher union and so forth in terms of the interest of staff within GRPS that may either want to move towards an endorsement or those kinds of things? How do you guys?
Well, we've offered that. We've
Work
sent a
hand
letter
in
to
hand.
all the staff asking for ASD and ESL and,
So we have partnerships with Aquinas through a grant. And then we've recently this year rolled out an ESL cohort with Grand Valley for current GRPS teachers to be reimbursed for their classes they're taking to earn their ESL endorsement through those 2 programs.
Yeah,
and it's bilingual or ESL. Is it bilingual also? Because we do
Yes.
have some
Yes.
with the, so bilingual or ESL, but, you know, it's more difficult. I mean, you have to, bilingual is a little bit more difficult than ESL because you have
Yeah.
to be grounded in the language and, you know, that's harder.
Yeah,
most of
it's
our
just-
staff don't have that.
It's hard to get a sense of the vision and strategy. So the cultural centers like Burton, right? Burton
Yes.
is a cultural center, K through 8th grade,
There are 18 cultural centers.
okay?
There are different models to learn English. And the majority of cultural centers are ESL model, which means we use English as a second language teachers to teach students English. We
It would
have-
be helpful to know that. Okay,
Okay.
so who are these 18 schools or 18
we have a feeder
models?
pattern. We can get you that.
Because it's helpful to see either how it's meeting or not, or the struggles, or in order for the board to be able to, if it's a finance issue, if it's other kinds of things that need to be discussed, and especially in terms of passing the baton. If they're gonna go from Burton Elementary to middle, or from Burton Elementary to another school, especially given the number of Hispanic families that we have, kids that we have, it seems like it's growing. The other benefits, obviously, is to our district. If more and more of our families, including white and African American, have access to that, how much more bilingual kids are we raising? Not just un hispano, Joe, but also Caroline might want her grandchildren. I don't know. Sorry, I'm picking on you, but
Well, that's a little bit
something like
different.
that.
So I just want to
Right.
make sure that we're not mixing apples and oranges. So the ESL, which is where we have the 18 schools, that's trying to teach, make sure that students understand and can speak English. And so that's right. We don't have, as a district, other than at the
Southwest.
Southwest, a strategy for Spanish language acquisition. So if the board decides that they want that, then that's a different strategy than we've been doing now, is a more holistic approach. And so we would need some time and some planning, and as you say, some, real strategies on how we will seek these potential candidates and be able to train them, et cetera, and get them ready to teach in a bilingual situation as opposed to ESL. So that's,
Yeah,
so we're
right.
not, I mean, we always struggle. I don't want to overemphasize that fact that we're constantly looking for ESL, but we do have more of a strategy in terms of getting the ESL component, because at this point, that's where we've seen the need.
And the dual language immersion is at Southwest, where you are totally bilingual by the time you leave 8th grade.
That's some nice dramatic.
At least nice music, yeah.
That's some nice dramatic stuff to what you're saying. Wow.
Like the background.
Yeah.
She really set you up well.
Like we're in a movie. No, that's okay.
So my understanding then is that it is only at Southwest that we have a program where kids, both English-speaking and Spanish-speaking, go
Where they
through.
learn both
Both languages.
languages.
Yes,
Mhm.
and by the time they,
Reading, writing, and speaking.
everything, Spanish and
Mhm.
English.
Whether your first language is English or your first language is Spanish, when you leave 8th grade, you are bilingual, biliterate.
Okay.
So I want to summarize. So from my understanding, I think it's important for this group to know, because when we are in broader discussions with the board, there are positions that are raised about whether or not we should have more bilingual strategies. So we have 18 cultural centers. Currently, based on our resources and our previous history, we're using the ESL model as a transition to learning.
Correct.
Correct, right?
There's one cultural center, Southwest,
And-
which is a cultural center / dual immersion program.
And then we have Southwest, which is the only full bilingual school, but it's a bilingual strategy, not necessarily just for transitioning
Exactly.
Correct,
non-English speakers to.
It's a theme.
Okay, so
correct.
so And at that school, we're having a hard time finding bilingual certified teachers to teach. So
Yes.
if we are being questioned to expand our ESL model or to change our ESL model to a bilingual model, we as yet have not found a way to get the resources to do so. Plus, we also need to know whether or not the ESL model works before we decide that we need to transition to a different model. And so I think that would be a question that we could have. But in terms of this conversation, it appears that were we even to consider shifting that model, it would be a while before we had the available resources to staff it.
That's
So,
correct.
Exactly.
Dr. Matias, I have a question, doesn't have anything to do with bilingual. May I ask a question about staffing?
Sure.
How is staffing for the entire district? How is that going? Are we pretty much filled all of
No.
our spots? No?
No,
Never.
never. We've got about,
It-
maybe 50 total openings, all staff.
Yeah.
Do you remember from the last vacancy report we had last week?
That might be about accurate.
Yeah, about,
for all
last time I
staff.
know, yeah, about 50. We're running maybe 40-some teachers?
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah. Teachers
40s, about
continue
40s.
to leave too, you know. We're still having some attrition. Not as much now, but, yeah, it's always, yeah, now our focus is looking at the December grads, trying to pick some of those up, those December grads up.
Do we have trouble finding people to teach like French and Spanish in the high school and middle schools just as a,
I wouldn't say French, but Spanish would be is one
it's
of our
more
more challenging
difficult?
subjects.
Okay.
And kind of what we run into at this time of year, like Sharon was saying, is it's hard to replace teachers who resign when school starts because the pool of candidates just aren't there.
Right, right.
And those, you know, some of the candidates that are available at this point are not necessarily candidates we would want. So, so it becomes, your pool really shrinks down and, you know, we don't just want a warm body, we want somebody that's
Right,
competent,
right.
so. And our sub rate has been pretty good this year. We've been filling in the 80s, high 80s, low 90s, which is pretty good for the subs. And you have to understand, we have to use our subs too for long-term leaves for staff. And we have quite a few staff on leaves. So that shrinks the availability of subs for these, you know, vacancies. But we are constantly, can Nick talk to you a little bit about some of the strategies then that we're trying to use? So,
you.
thank you, Mike.
Yeah, this is an important, as Dr. Baker was alluding, that there's a lot of conversations, and it's nice to be really clear with the public on what our cultural schools are, what are emergent dual enrollment, and so that there's not an assumption that, well, they should be fully bilingual. Well, that's not the
exactly.
strategy. The strategy is to transition them from Spanish speaking to English speaking. And obviously there's a parental role. If I want my kids to be bilingual, then I need to speak Spanish at home and things like that. So,
And
thanks.
Dr. Gunnar will help us look at that information.
Yes, some of the cultural centers.
Thank you.
So for our strategy for ESL teachers or hiring more ESL teachers, we talked about earlier, we already have 1,200, 1,300 teachers in-house in our school district, and many of them are probably interested in obtaining further education. So whether it's Aquinas or Grand Valley or other schools, we've developed cohorts and partnerships to help our teachers become ESL certified. That doesn't necessarily solve the whole problem, and we also still have vacancies to fill. So we've looked at MSU has they have an excellent all-teacher program, but they have an excellent ESL program. Grand Valley, we talked about, they have a master's program. This year, they're going to be graduating their first class of undergraduate ESL teachers, which means they will be first-year teachers who also have an ESL endorsement.
And this is important because 3 years ago, we started working with Grand Valley, especially because, you know, the majority of our teachers come from Grand Valley, and really ask them to get this ESL endorsement, because we really believe all teachers, we're moving toward all teachers really needing it. And because they were only offering it in the master's program, we was like, that's not helping us. And so they've been really good and strategic in terms of starting that program and trying to fill that need. And we talked to all the universities about that. That is really, you do a disadvantage to the student that comes out without that, because that really just is continuing. As Reverend Matias says, our population is really growing on all language fronts, and so it's really critical that they have that. So we were really happy that that they took that up.
Yeah, so that's going to be a nice way to add teachers to our mix. Beyond that, I meet regularly with, we saw each other at Ferris last week. I go to Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan, Wayne State. It's a partnership I've been trying to develop as far as recruiting more teachers. And then outside, usually in the Midwest, we venture sometimes further south, but kind of what we run into is the snow factor. And so, and that's exactly what happened. Like I was at Tennessee State last year, which is the University of Tennessee, and that's exactly what I had happen to some of the candidates down there. Like, there's snow up there.
Going up there?
Yeah. So that's for teachers. For our support staff, we've partnered with. I don't know if you're familiar with Link. I go to their quarterly job fairs every quarter. Hispanic Chamber has had a job fair. Otherwise, I promote our job vacancies through them. Urban League, Urban League is a place that we go for job fairs, and we do our postings as far as trying to reach out to support staff. We also, 2 years ago, started hosting our own job fair. So I go to a couple dozen job fairs a year, but this has been pretty successful as far as getting a lot of local attention. Most of the candidates who come to this are teachers, but we do get about, I think last couple of years we've had about 180 people attend, and about 25% of them are support staff candidates.
This year you tried something different with support staff.
And then we did
Mr. Johnson, so
we did
talk about that.
on-site interviews this year as far as for any department that was interested. So teachers, custodial operations, security. And so, we're just trying to narrow the timeline from applying, expressing interest, applying, and getting hired, because especially for the support staff, we're not just competing with other schools, we're competing with other industries for these candidates. Teachers, we're competing with other school districts, but people who are applying to be secretaries or paraprofessionals, they can really, we're competing salary-wise sometimes with McDonald's. So we have to move quickly.
And we just, as you all know, just negotiated the new contracts, and so with some pay raises to try to help us be a little bit more competitive on the support staff side. It's
And that's where we have started to see an uptick in people applying, which is
it's been good, yeah.
Yeah.
That was
Good.
really helpful.
Yeah.
Our pool got larger after that. So we thank you all for that.
yeah.
You want to talk about maybe the YES program a little bit and some of the things that we're trying to do to grow our own?
Yeah, so this isn't necessarily just for ESL or bilingual teachers, but for teachers in general. We've been trying to do a lot with partners to increase not only the number, but the diversity of our teachers. So that's why I mentioned Wayne State earlier. They're probably the most diverse College of Ed within Michigan, followed by the Michigan State University Urban Education Cohort. So those are two partnerships. So for the last couple of years, thankfully to local partners, it hasn't cost us anything. We've brought a bus of students from Wayne State, a bus of students from Michigan State. So these are juniors or seniors in the College of Ed, sometimes sophomores, who we show them. We visit 2 to 3 schools. We take them out to lunch. We've taken them out to dinner. We've taken them to a couple of museums and different things as far as to get them engaged with our kids, to get them engaged with our schools, and get them engaged with our city to increase the interest of those candidates to apply to Grand Rapids Public Schools. So that's with those programs. Now, yes, a Young Educator Society, it's something I'm on the board of. That was started in the 80s to increase the, again, the diversity of students going into College of Ed. And so with that, we were able to bring a group of Ottawa Hills students to the YES conference this past spring. Now, this is the first time in, I think, 8 years that GRPS students went to this. I wasn't here in the early 2000s or 90s. I mean, I was alive, but I wasn't here. But we used to be one of the largest school districts to go to the YES conference. I think it was because there was a couple teachers that were really involved. So we're trying to bring that back, partnering with our counseling department. We've been trying to roll out YES student clubs in our high schools and middle schools and then obviously we've got the Teacher Academy that's been rolling out as well. So we're doing a multifaceted approach. Now, these aren't short-term solutions.
No.
This is going to be, we're not going to see anything tomorrow, but it's laying seeds in the groundwork for future success, which hopefully will do a couple things. A, increase the diversity of our teacher pool, decrease our efforts we have to do because the groundwork's already laid of just, you graduate from Ottawa or Union or Innovation Central or City, get your teaching degree and come right back to GR.
Are you seeing that GRPS is more desirable out there?
Well, it's still more difficult to get East Siders to come here. There's lots of different reasons for that, and but we're trying our best to, and that was one of the reasons to bring folks here. A lot of East Siders don't come over here, and so they have this impression that is somewhat true, but not completely true. So we need to expose them to it and let them know that there is diversity here, and there are. It's a real community that would be supportive and encouraging, and so that's one of the things is and so
and that's what we do at the lunches and dinners.
Yeah.
With our community partners, we're bringing in diverse professionals to get engaged with these young people and to show them it's not
it won't be
just-
so isolating.
Yeah,
When they do
yeah,
come,
yeah.
they'll have mentors and people
We're all
that
kind of
would support them.
wandering around this.
Yeah.
And that is a real
Practicing our political.
and that is a real that's a valid question, especially with Wayne State, because it's similar to Grand Valley in the sense that a lot of their students come from within 50 miles of the university itself, and so there's a comfort of just staying in that area, and so that's partly why we decided to try to bring them over here. I've spoken to their Morris Hood group, which was originally a group founded to encourage African American men to go into teaching, and over the last couple decades, it's switched to just any men to go into teaching. But and that's a lot of questions I have is like, oh, it's 3 hours away or 2 hours away, and it's along with many other questions. But I've found through just, again, it's not short-term solutions, but attending their meetings, going to their job fairs, talking to their students regularly. So like, oh, I know this person from Grand Rapids. He sometimes brings people with him, and it becomes closer for them. So I know we've hired, not a lot, but we've hired a handful of people from those events, and I just see it increasing as more and more familiarity comes through.
Thanks a lot. I think that, again, John and I are on the campaign trail, and this is probably one of the number one questions that we get is, we need more teachers that look like our kids or teachers that can speak the language of our kids. And I think it's important that we know, one, the challenges of doing that, of hiring, and two, all the efforts are being made to say that. So
It is important, and the research really supports that. An article just came out, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, that just kind of reinforced this, especially it was interesting, it said especially for African-American boys. It was really, really important in terms of their academic success. So, and boys in general, even, and Hispanic boys, so tended to make more of a difference, they saw with boys. So we are constantly aware of the need, and We've been going to some HBCUs, which is with some mixed results, but here in the Midwest, trying to,
Yeah, I guess and one more thing about HBCUs is we've been partnering with, so Central State University is in Ohio, and then Chicago State University isn't, I believe, technically an HBCU, but it's a Thurgood Marshall Fund college. So those are probably the closest universities in that realm. And so we've been, again, going there regularly. I'm working on trying to get them in the loop as far as bringing their students here. But what we run into there is the difficulty in our students in Michigan are graduating and getting Michigan certifications. There's hoops they have to jump through if you're out of
Yeah.
state. There's hoops you have to jump through if you're out of state, and then there's extra hoops if you have less than 3 years of teaching experience.
Yeah, that's
so-
the other.
That's what we
wow.
run into with our outside of Michigan recruiting efforts.
Well, this is very helpful, you know, in the dialogue, the progress that's being made, the leaps that you all are doing in the recruitment efforts, and certainly within the school district, giving teachers opportunities to advance
yes.
in their careers and stay. So
And
this is,
paraprofessionals too.
Yeah.
We have a program with paraprofessionals. And how many paraprofessionals do we have in it now? Trying to get.
Well, it's down to just one, but
Oh.
there was another grant partnership with Grand Valley is to get paraprofessionals endorsed if they already have a bachelor's degree in elementary endorsed, and then it was a interesting science grant where it was elementary / middle school science endorsement, and so we still have one parapro, and I think there's 1 year left in the program. Yeah, other opportunities like that we're
Yeah, we're
talking
trying on
with-
every front.
yeah.
thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Interesting. The challenges of getting people into education.
Yes.
Good morning.
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 Okay. Just trying to get the PowerPoint up and running. While the PowerPoint's gonna get up and running, I'm here to speak to you about writing and kind of give you that overview on, what our students should know and be able to do is related to the standards, how it's assessed, and then how we're teaching the standards and, the curricular resources that are used, and then what our next steps are. Okay, so as you can see, I have the PowerPoint up there, you may have it in front of you, but our state standards dictate, right, what our students should know and be able to do by the end of that given year. And so the college and career readiness standards kind of build that foundation on what our students need to learn. So they need to be able to write as a way of offering and supporting opinions, right, demonstrate that understanding of the subject. They have to be able to communicate clearly. So our standards kind of dictate the criteria for writing. When you go into, you may have them with you, the anchor standards, which are the next ones, right? We have 10 standards for writing, right? Our first 3 standards talk about the text types of writing that our students should be able to produce at the end of the given year. The next 3 standards talk about the production and distribution of writing, right? So that whole writing process. Then they also they dictate, the standards 7, 8, and 9 talk about students being able to do research and build knowledge around certain topics. And then the standards also address the fact that our students should be writing routinely over an extended period of time. These anchor standards are the same for every grade level. It just looks different in kindergarten as opposed to a 12th grade student.
We gave you an actual copy of the standards because the print was so small.
Yeah, thank
Just for
you.
your review at a point later.
So kindergarten, that first standard will talk about, with support, the student should be able to produce an opinion, right? And support it with evidence. In 12th grade, they'll talk about the student should be able to write an argument. So it's the same text type of writing. So the scope and sequence is there, kindergarten through 12th grade. So that's what our students should be able to know and be able to do, right?
So the next thing I'm gonna kind of touch on is, okay, so we have these standards, but how are they measured? How are they assessed, right? And I have divided that into how does the district assess the standards, and then how does the state assess our writing standards? All right, so for the district, we assess these writing standards through common assessments. We do have writing prompts at the end of each marking period that align to the different text types of writing. And then we also have unit assessments through the curricular resources that we have currently. And then teachers create their assessments and progress monitor because they have access to the standards as well. In this slide, you can also see this is just a sample of a writing portfolio cover that we have for 4th grade. So we have this writing portfolio cover sheet, kindergarten through 8th grade, that kind of dictates by each month what students should be learning how to do and producing. Okay. Now at the state level, we know that kindergarten through 8th grade would take the M-STEP, right? And the M-STEP assesses reading, writing, listening. And of course, we have research in there. We have 4 claims. Writing is assessed through our claim 2. And if you kind of look at the slide, I put the blueprint up there, and you can see that I have a 3rd grade, 5th grade, and 8th grade up there. In 3rd grade, claim 2, which is that writing, there are 12 to 13 questions, right? And in 5th grade, it's 9 to 11, and then 8th grade, 9 to 11 questions. These questions assess the student's ability to write either an argumentative piece of writing, an informational piece of writing, or a narrative piece of writing, but they also need to know the elements of those pieces of writing. Because these questions don't ask the students to produce an on-demand, full-length piece of writing, what they do is it's more multiple choice. And I'm going to show you an example of what that would look like. Right? So students really need to know what makes a good introduction paragraph for one of those given text types of writing, right? How do they write a conclusion? What goes into the body of these pieces of writing? On the next slide, what I have is kind of like a breakdown. So when we get our results for the M-STEP, we get that proficiency score. So in 3rd grade, you can see the proficient level is 1300, right, at 1316. That includes all the claims together. But the state of Michigan also gives us reports that breaks down the different claims so we can see how they did in claim 1 for reading, how they did in claim 2, claim 3, and claim 4. What I also have up here is what the parents get. It's a parent report. And so if you can look at those bars, it actually breaks it down into reading, writing, listening, and research. So claim 2 assesses our writing, right? Our students' ability to write or to know what goes into a full-length a narrative piece or an informational text type of writing. And so those bars will indicate if a student needs attention given to learning, right, the elements of writing, or if they're proficient or they're making adequate progress in that claim.
And
Please
again,
stop
I
me if you
think-
have any questions.
I think again, this can be really complex for a parent looking at this and say, okay, so if my kid is in the orange in a particular area, what can I do at home to help my kid get to that blue and so forth? And so I'm just wondering, the other question I had is in terms of taking into account the ESL issues of students, regardless if they're Hispanic or African or, and they're transitioning, the writing aspects can be very challenging. In Spanish, often it seems reversed to the English way of writing. And so do teachers take into account some of those pieces in terms of understanding that, paper toilet, toilet paper can, in Spanish, it would sound one way, in English, you write it another, and they're constantly being, well, this is red, And it's because you're transitioning from this language to the other. Ah, okay, and then all of a sudden they pay more attention. Not that
Right.
they're doing that in kindergarten, but, or
Right.
first or second grade, but how do you account for some of those things?
So I do know, like, and I'm looking at Dr. Gano, but I, like, at the cultural centers, right? So those teachers do have strategies that they use.
So there is a block of ESL time at the cultural centers along with reading. So at the ESL time, that would be addressed. Also during the reading and writing instructional framework, that would be addressed too. That's why we have ESL endorsed teachers that are also SIOP trained.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And, I mean, I'll speak to that a little bit later in this presentation, but that's something we did, consider as I was talking to all our English teachers. And so this time, part of our district PD, I started with middle school, was all our English teachers got just like the basic training for SIOP, so that they had those strategies. It was a writing PD, but how do we teach writing for language learners? But that's a great question. The next slide that I have is also, it's just a snapshot of a report that we can get on the secure site. And this is a district level report for 5th grade, the past spring MSTEP results. And you can see, so when the district gets the report back, it tells us, it's not very detailed, but it does tell us which of those writing assessment targets need more attention as a district as a whole, right? And so the triangle going down is more at risk. The yellow ones is, they need some attention paid to it. And you can see, so this is a 5th grade in their claim to writing, revising brief text of informational text, right? Narrative text, an opinion text. So informational and opinion, we can see as a district, right? For 5th grade, we need a lot more attention to teaching them how to do that. So what this shows is those targets or those criteria that are assessed on our MSTEP for writing. Any questions so far?
So again, if there are deficiencies or if they're struggling and they're going, let's say, from a 5th grade to middle school, how are they taking into account those students that are going to be struggling in particular classes and then helping them get to grade level or get to that place where they don't continue to lag, but either meet or begin to achieve?
Right. So that's where, when you look at these reports and teachers are progress monitoring, right, how the students are doing on their writing, this is when I'll show you a little bit more. So we use that kind of the writing workshop model where you have small group instruction where the teachers are targeting those students that need more instruction or practice, right, in achieving mastery of being able to write a given text, right? Then through that whole writing process of writing, drafting, writing, revising, we're getting our students to that.
Excellent.
Did you want to add something, Sevens? Okay. The next slide actually is a sample of one of our claim to questions. And kind of, what I wanted to point out here is that our students are not asked directly. They only have one question on IMSTEP, and I'll show you that in a second, where they have to write a full-length essay, and that's worth 4 points. But most of those claim to questions that you saw in the blueprint, 12 to 18 questions, look more like this, right? So for example, in this question, Let's say a student is writing an opinion letter to her teacher about snacks in her classroom, read the draft of the letter and complete the task. So there's the draft, and the task is which sentence is the best closing statement for this student's letter. So students have to really revise, edit, right? Another piece of writing. And so that's why that whole writing process becomes so important when taking students through editing each other's, their peer-to-peer review, looking at mentor texts and seeing how a closing statement is written, right? What it looks like in the introduction becomes extremely important, because then the students have to read the full answers. And this, you can see, is a 5th grade sample assessment straight from the MSTEP. And they make sense of which sentence would be suitable for a closing statement, right? So bring that closure to that piece of writing. And that's different to, writing your own on-demand, full-length piece of essay. So we have to be really strategic when teaching the criteria.
So it still I mean, anyway. I read ahead. The next question is like, I mean, it really seems like in this case, we're not necessarily teaching kids to write. We're teaching kids how to, well, not
analyze.
even how to, I mean, even this, I mean, I think that this next question is like, I'm still trying to figure out the answer to it. So, I mean, it's
Analysis, and you'll see that, I'll show you the
but
rubric.
we're
in a bit.
teaching the students the strategies for understanding how to answer the questions to these tests. Are we
The
really,
reality.
are we really teaching, I mean, editing, it
Teach to the test.
seems.
Well, that's legitimate, and that's one of my concerns. I know for me, writing is really sensitive because I didn't grow up in a bilingual environment educational system, and so even today, I'm terrified of my writing. And so my kids thankfully went through our schools, and in reflecting back in their education, they're good writers. And they're not answering questions. They're able to take a piece of body, research it, write their conclusions, and we need to do that. We need to get there with our students, because that's what their professors are wanting of them. And certainly with modern technology, man, they can get all kinds of writing out there, but to actually come up with a research piece that they have done, they put together the pieces and then their conclusions is really critical if we're going to get them ready. So I understand the struggle, but
Definitely. And they have to learn how to be strategic with being able to support, right, what they're saying. And you can see in the next question, which is their full-length piece of writing. This is 3rd grade through 5th grade. They also get it again in 11th grade when they take the SAT, when they have their essay, full-length essay there, right? Now this piece is an on-demand piece of writing, and they can get either a narrative, informational piece of writing that they might have to produce, or an argumentative piece of writing that they have to produce. But it says, write an essay analyzing how the fisherman and the emperor are important to the development of the theme of the drama. So they have to read the piece of text, analyze it, and then write in response, right, to that piece of text. And if you look at the rubric actually measures their ability to read and analyze the text and then respond to it, but then it also measures how they write, right? Their organization of, the piece of writing, their structure, the word choice, that's measured as well. right? So the same thing for the next slide at the SAT. You can see the writing standards being assessed on their writing and language assessment, which is the timed assessment. And then they also are assessed on the full-length essay that they have to do. Oops. No. So here, I mean, similar to that fifth grade sample from the M-STEP, here's the SAT essay prompt. It says, read the passage, explain how the author builds an argument to persuade an audience, right? So it's still in response to the text that they read.
How is the SAT score for this portion reported for the students? That's not part of the English, so that's
No,
a
it's
separate score?
Correct.
And do colleges spend time looking at that score?
I don't know, colleges spend time looking at the
I
writing.
mean, I've never seen it.
We know what they ask for, they're
Right.
asking for those, of course, the normal SAT scores or the ACT scores, on that 0 to 36 scale or the 400 to 1600 scale.
Yeah,
Um,
which doesn't include this.
It doesn't, correct.
No, it doesn't include the writing.
So then do students put the effort into this? Because this becomes really a measurement of their school to some extent, not so much themselves if it's not used by the student.
I would say that SAT and ACT, I would say that that's where we see the most effort in any
Oh,
test
okay.
that's given
Good.
in the school district. There's so much emphasis on it being the most important test they'll probably take in their lives.
Okay.
So-
I meant on the writing portion of
Yeah,
the SAT.
I
Yeah.
don't think that the students are thinking, have analyzed it to that level, that this may not be worth the same as something else.
Although I can say from personal experience of my kids, my youngest was the first one who did the SAT. They do look for the EN 101 writing class for college. They will look at your SAT score, see if you have to take it or not, depending
Oh,
on the college.
for your placement. That's important. That is
Yeah,
important. Yeah.
depending on the college, though.
That's,
Yeah, and that's one of the critical points of remedial or into the 101 piece, that then it has a domino effect on their academic careers in their first year. So,
Definitely. So I skipped, the other slide that also talked about the SAT prompt a little bit more. But now I'm here, I'm at a slide that talks about, so what do we have as tools, right, for teaching writing? At the elementary level, our current curricular resource, we have, as our main curricular resource, we have Reading Street. Reading Street follows the writing workshop model, so you have mini lesson, and then you break up into small groups, right, where students are independently writing or writing with a partner while the teacher is working with a small group, right, and kind of more targeted on what the students need to move forward. It also follows that whole writing process model, and then there's a whole group sharing session. We actually have the curriculum units that are within the Reading Street follow the 6 traits of writing. So they teach the students how to write for ideas, organization, word choice, sentence fluency. And the rubrics that come with the program also kind of give feedback on each of those 6 traits. So the teacher can be targeted, right, when giving feedback and moving learning forward for the students on the writing process. Let's see. So when it is taught at elementary level, we have 120 minutes for ELA, 3rd grade through 5th grade, and 140 minutes kindergarten through 2nd grade. And the writing block of time is actually woven into that. So they actually have a 30 to 40 minute direct instruction, or they can use that writing workshop model where they have whole group, small group, independent practice time already woven into the ELA time for teaching writing at the K-5 level. When you get to high school, it becomes a little more, let me talk about the curriculum first and then the curricular resource first and then go into how it is taught. So at the high school level, we have Right Source currently from Houghton Mifflin, and that teaches the writing and the grammar. It follows the same 6 traits, that is K5, so we have that whole K12 kind of alignment. They speak the same language, they look at ideas, organization, voice, word choice, convention, sentence fluency, and it follows the same framework, which would be mini lessons, small group work, independent work, right, whole class sharing. So that goes kindergarten through 12th grade as far as the structure of teaching writing and the curriculum, the main curricular resource that we use. So in additional to the Right Source, we also have, teachers have access to other writing units that have been developed. Michigan Association of Intermediate School Administrators came up with the MESA units for writing. There are quite a few high school teachers who use those. The Right Well writing units are some of the other writing units that are also used. These units have been vetted. They're aligned to the Common Core standards for writing. They provide extensions, lessons that follow the whole writing process. They are written using the writing workshop model in mind, so it provides a little more resources for the teachers to be creative when using the curricular resources to teach writing. Right.
Now, are the high schoolers shown a college writing sample? This is what you're going to see when you enter your first year of college.
Yes, the high school teachers work, right now I believe they're also working on those college essays. So they start with showing mentor text. So what does it look like, right? And then breaking that up so that then they can model their writing around what good piece of writing looks like. Now, as far as teaching writing, it becomes a little more complicated when you get into secondary level because you don't have those 120 minutes where you have a writing block of time and a reading, right, block of time. So it's taught as part of your English course. So it is taught together with reading and writing. So the literature, the analysis part, and then the writing part as well. Depending on the high school, you could have a 55-minute block of time. There are some high schools that have block planning, so you might have an hour and a half. They create their own reading and writing schedules, right? The teachers have the ability to do that using the curricular resources that we have. Now, the pacing dictates what text type of writing is going to be taught at what time, just so there's some guidance. And that students are exposed to and taught to how to write all the 3 text types of writing that are required by our standards. So I kind of added a little bit of data in there because I had the M-STEP data up there. This is the SAT data, and you can see that approaching benchmark, the orange, for writing and language, that second bullet there, is where the writing is scored at the SAT level as well. And that's without that essay. This is again a 3rd grade M-STEP. This is how we get the results on how students did in their claim 2 and in their writing so that we can, be targeted on what we need to be teaching. So the next couple of steps kind of show the data there. So we know this. What are we kind of doing about it? What are our next steps, right? So something that we have started doing is looking to provide more professional development around how to teach writing. And so we started that this August. Our middle school teachers received PD around writing. Looking at the progression of writing, the rubrics, so what would it look like in 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, but what would it look like at the beginning of the year as opposed to the end of the year? How to plan to teach writing. and then how to plan for providing targeted feedback to the students using the rubric, so students become familiar with that rubric as well, so they can take ownership of their own learning also to move their writing, right? We are also looking at additional curricular resources. So currently, we're piloting a new ELA program in 6 elementary schools, 2 high schools. That has a real strong writing component to it and is aligned with all our standards.
Now, do you do writing across the curriculum so that the teachers in the other subjects are expected to have their students write?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes, that is something that we do as a department. We work with social studies and science and even math, looking at the same rubrics, right? So that
Okay.
an argumentative writing, right? So claim, evidence, reasoning in a science, right? You have to look at evidence, you have to support it with evidence. And so we kind of look at that across content area rather than leaving it only to the English teacher to have to do that. So yes, definitely. And in fact, these new programs that we are currently piloting kind of look at that. My perspectives in the secondary in, Ready Gen in 6 of the schools, they also have a really good ESL component to it that helps with breaking it down to teach writing. And they also have components where students can take ownership of their writing and get feedback where it is scored. So we're trying to see, is that going to make a difference with the teaching of writing and the outcomes that we get as a result of using that curricular resource. One kind of last strategy I want to touch on is the classroom library. So we invested in making sure kindergarten through 5th grade, and there are some middle school classrooms that we purchased classroom libraries. So anywhere between, I believe it was 200, 400, 200 to 400 books per classroom. And this was to get the students reading more, and so these books are leveled. They're leveled using Fonda-Sapinel and Lexile, and so it covers the whole span of what should be, at the beginning, slightly below that grade level, all the way up to the end of that grade level. So it's not only to get the students reading, but it's also to show what good writing looks like, right? You talked about those mentor texts. These classroom libraries have 50% literacy, literature books, and 50% informational text, so that they are exposed to not only good reading, but also good writing, right? Because we know that reading proficiency also influences the writing. And so those are the standards there, right? Yeah. If there are any questions?
Yeah, it's just really, obviously, a lot of information. But this is such a critical area, especially if our district continues to make these strides in equipping our students for college and really excelling and being able to get the kind of scholarships in other arenas that are so necessary, especially for urban schools. So
Definitely.
this is really important to discuss and continue to figure out how we both help our students and help the parents. If a parent can recognize what good writing looks like, at the very least, they can help their kid even in other languages. So
Definitely.
we know that a lot of our parents are educated in their own school systems, but the language barrier, but they still recognize good writing when they read it and stuff. So
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for your time.
The headliner.
Take us home. Perfect. Thank you. Good morning, board members.
Morning.
First time I've actually got to sit at this table and present, so I would like to say thank you for your service. I know it's a lot of time, so appreciate you guys. I
May
would
we
like
have
to.
your name? I'm sorry, I
Oh,
don't think
yeah,
I've met
like,
you.
Just getting to it. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Ryan Huppert, and I'm the principal at City High Middle School and the
Oh,
Center
I
for
have met you,
Economy.
okay. That's okay.
So, as I understand, you guys would like a little bit of an update on how things are going at City, and specifically with regard to the bond and International Baccalaureate, et cetera, some of the trends. So, if it works, I'm going to kind of cruise through the slides, give you that overview, some of the big bullets, and then I think you guys would probably want to know some specifics. So I'll let you guys ask those questions as you see fit. But feel free to stop me at any given point. So with regard to the bond, we are one of the first high schools after Frost to get some much needed bond facilities updates and upgrades. We're 2/3 of the way through. Just wanted to say, if you guys haven't been over to see what it looks like, we'd love to give you guys a tour. Come on by, check it out. We will be finishing up completely in the spring. So they may be putting some finishing touches on over the summer, but it's looking very good. Not easy, though, I will say. 2 years of kind of shuffling
Oh,
room to
yeah.
room.
That's
We're looking
tough.
forward to wrapping it up.
Yeah.
All right, so the next slide, you'll see some enrollment trends. And just want to make sure that you realize if you start with the first line, academic year 12-13, the enrollment for 7th through 12th grade was 632 students. And the next year, we moved into the former Creston building, and it jumped up to 699. And now we've been kind of consistently growing our enrollment and are at 920 students in 7th through 12th grade, with the 6th grade Center for Economicology in its own separate campus or space on campus in the back, making the total at 984. That is just a great thing. I think we're offering this program to more students, and we continue to see great scores. So kids seem to be doing very well with it. A little bit more about those scores. The next slide, you'll see our SAT results. And so you'll see in 2012-13, we had an ACT score of 23.9, which compared to the SATs around 1,200, 1,190. And we've continued to tick up a bit and stay right around that 1,250. This year, we went from 5th in the state to 3rd, as I'm sure you guys have seen, with an SAT score of 1,253. Something obviously very proud of, and yeah, we have our, little dips and ups and downs, but we continue to perform in the top 5 and have so even with the larger numbers. So something we're very excited about. And then a little bit on the International Baccalaureate Diploma. So just the big picture overview is that obviously every student receives the Board of Education, State of Michigan endorsed diploma. However, they have the opportunity, if they achieve at a certain level through their IB diploma program exams, to also achieve the International Baccalaureate Diploma. And so what you see are 2 lines on this chart. The green line shows the number of students, they're called candidates, diploma program candidates, who sat for exams. And then the orange line shows the number of diplomas that were earned. The global average of students who sit for exams and actually get the diploma is around 60%. So it's not an easy thing to do. IB diploma program is considered the most rigorous high school program in the world. So you'll see the first year in 2013, that little orange dot is just above 0. It's actually at 1. First year, we got 1 diploma out of 80 students. A little bit of a learning curve there. It's very intense, intentional, and a program with a lot of depth and breadth. And so we had our work cut out for us and continued to tick up. And this year in 2018, we got up to 54%, up from 51 the year before, and in 40s before that. So we continue to tick up. We hope to tick up every year as we get better at what we do. And we will have our largest senior class This year, in city's history, with approximately 120 some seniors sitting for those exams, so that's about a 50% increase in the class size. So it'll be exciting to see the great things they do.
Are they required to take the test? All students are required.
Yeah, that's another interesting aspect of IB at City is most typically the International Baccalaureate program is either, if it's in a public school, it's generally a track that say 10% of the students might take, like an honors track or an AP track. Or it's offered strictly to all students at a private school, a residential boarding school, that type of a situation where parents are paying a significant amount of tuition for it. But at City, and we're one of just a handful of public high schools in the entire nation that offer all students that come to our high school the full range of International Baccalaureate offerings, from middle years program, which is kind of that middle and early high school piece, and the diploma program. So all students are considered full diploma candidates, and the superintendent has paid for their exam fees every year to ensure that there's equity and equal access for all students, regardless of ability to pay, because traditionally it's about $1,000, 900 and some per student to pay for the exams. So the fact that that's something that we do here is, I mean, it's just almost unheard of. It's tremendous, yeah.
So it is required then, all
It's
kids
required, yep, and it's required, and we pay for it,
Okay,
so that
great,
every kid
great,
can do
great.
it. Yep.
And I think that's one of the probably popular, because parents that know this know the value that they're getting in a public setting, so.
Yeah, and I think we can't really say that enough. I don't think we say it enough. Some parents, I would hate for someone to not know that, hey, you're getting this, right, amazing service provided to you on top of, right,
Right.
a great public school education
Right.
as it is. So you're right, that's a great piece. We need to be great about sharing it. I'll just kind of skim through some of these next few because they're kind of an overview on the IB, and then I'll let you guys chime in with questions as you see it. But it's basically has a lot to do with appreciation for diverse cultures and diverse perspectives, challenging programs and rigorous assessments. It's very much a research-based, highly academic program. And the last piece I think kind of encapsulates it well is that other people with their differences can also be right. So IB is not looking for what the right answer is. They're looking for you to justify what you believe to be right based on your values and to do that in an academic way. As I mentioned before, we have the middle years program, which is grades 6 through 10. It's kind of there's the primary years program, which is we have at Coit, and moving that also into Sherwood. And the middle years program starts in 6th grade and goes through 10th. So students who enter into City at 7th grade are all middle years program students. And then when they enter into the 11th and 12th grade, that's when they begin the diploma program. So that next slide gives you a little bit of a breakdown on that. It's a very challenging program, extremely challenging. As I said before, it's considered the most kind of the gold standard of diplomas internationally of all high school secondary diplomas. And so there's a lot of additional requirements above and beyond their normal course load, which requires a lot of our students and staff. Some diploma program interesting notes. The piece there about the cost that we pay for through our budget, which is an amazing service to offer our families. There are some mandatory training cycles that occur, so there's additional expense that we need to make sure that we're budgeting for and making sure that our teachers are up to speed with the curriculum on a rotating basis. All new teachers must be trained within a certain amount of time, so they have standards that we have to meet for that. Student-teacher ratio suggested is lower just based off the fact that the intensity of the programming is more so than average. It's often compared to the AP, Advanced Placement. Advanced Placement is more kind of shallow and wide, and the International Baccalaureate model is much more about depth and the way that we ask students to think, not so much of the memorizing of dates, names, people's places, more of the understanding of concepts, etc. Next slide talks a little bit about those requirements, and I'll just hit on some of the the main pieces, the diploma program, all the courses are 2 years. So you start it in 11th grade and you finish it at the end of 12th grade. Then you sit for your exams in the month of May every year, and they sit for exams for each of their 6 courses, and they may have 2 to 3 exams per course. So each day they may take 2 or 3 couple-hour exams, and they may do that over 10 or 12 different days throughout the month of May, so it's an intensive exam cycle. And then they have some additional requirements, theory of knowledge. They have a presentation and essay that's a couple thousand words that are above and beyond that. Creativity, action, and service hours, some of those community service hours, it's approximately 150 hours that they're required to complete over 2 years during their junior and senior year. And then the extended essay, which is, again, outside of the regular class time, and it's upwards of 4,000 words. It's generally a 10 to 14-page paper that they work with an individual mentor on, and that mentor is someone that we have to kind of find. So that's getting our teachers to do some of that additional above and beyond is certainly something that we really work hard to cultivate. And just a little bit of an overview here. Increases in data and the diploma earnings have been incrementally positive at City. We have really undergone a huge amount of institutional learning to implement the IB, and there has been a huge school culture shift by both staff and students to embrace the International Baccalaureate. That was really a bit of a learning curve and a struggle at first because of the additional work and time and learning that was required by staff and students, but we're finding that people have bought in, and we're seeing those gains. And it does require a bit of additional work, so we have to just find ways to support our students, their well-being, support our staff through those ways that we can to make sure everyone is successful at it. And then as far as some next steps, we are looking to kind of stabilize our enrollment. This senior class was one of the first classes that we had started in 7th grade at 180 students. There's between 120, 130 currently with us still. And then that number juniors, we've got in the 130s, sophomores, 150 some, freshmen, 100. So we're seeing that trickle up to slowly stabilize. So we could add anywhere up to 100 more students in the next few years. Just depends on attrition and retention.
Are there a lot of kids that move out of City after 9th or 10th grade?
Some do. So obviously we get that between 8th and 9th grade. We will generally lose 20% of that class because they look to go back to, say, maybe their home school for athletics for high school, or maybe also we see that occur between 10th and 11th grade where students get up to that diploma program and they go, wow, I'm not necessarily sure I really want to do all that extra work, because it's certainly not for everybody. So that does occur kind of at those grades mainly. So some staff supports, we really just want to focus in on our human capital and retaining teachers, making sure we are able to compensate them for some of those additional requirements. They have a loss of prep that we have to adjust for, but that's minimal, and staff are able to make that work. We budget for that. The trainings and schedule accommodations just to make the IB work, and we've got a pretty great system going. And then student supports. It's our number one focus is student wellness. And so we have several different wellness initiatives, mentor supports, family education and outreach around IB that we're doing to make sure that families, staff, students are all successful there and enjoy their time at City and make it all the way through and do great things afterwards.
Does the staff stay? I mean, do they?
We have a really good staff retention. Yep,
Okay.
we do. They're just, keeping them happy, right? Trying to
good.
keep them happy. That's the key.
Good. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. They do definitely have to put in a little bit extra, but
Bet.
everybody's got their burdens, and that just happens to be the style of burden that we have to bear at City. So, any questions?
I mean, some of the questions that I'm getting are in regards to the extended essay and just kind of the support that students get from their mentors during that process. It seems like often they're left to themselves. And so the check-in, or I don't know how that works, but just continuing to aid students in however that writing takes place. I know my kids went in when it first began, and
Uh-huh.
it was quite.
I remember.
These gray hairs are part of that process. But just
Yes, you're absolutely correct in terms of that is definitely, I think, for us, an area that we need to focus in order to make some more incremental gains, because you have to have a certain base level score on your extended essay or you're excluded from attaining the diploma, and that's because they want to make sure that all students are well-rounded learners and well-balanced, and so you cannot have any significant deficits in any area. And so there is a mentor system. The challenge is making sure that we have enough staff to have a low mentee base or mentor to mentee ratio. And so as we've grown our number of students, that becomes a challenge, right? So actually this year, we're reaching out to community members to see those people that have skills in academic writing or professional writing, or stakeholders in our community that want to serve to support students. So that's something that we've implemented this year in order to serve that need. And then there's also some additional training that we're going to be signing leadership and staff up for around the extended essay, because what you've said is spot on. That's a need for us.
So the one question I get about city, which has been persistent, I think part of it is based on misperceptions, but is that city is less racially diverse than schools in the rest of the city. I have my own experiences with city. I see it as very racially diverse, but there are people who are concerned that the retention rate of African American Latino students is lower than that of white students. Can you address any of those?
Yeah, so I think that is something that it's nuanced in terms of really tracking the data to see who's staying, who's coming, who's going, and that's something that we're trying to get better at. The good news is that we are more racially diverse and have a much larger minority makeup than we've ever had. City currently sits at about 35% Hispanic. That's doubled in the past 5 years. We have a similar percent of African American students, but since our population has grown about 40%, that means we also have 40% more African American students that we serve than in the years past. And so our percent ethnic background is, again, about 35% Hispanic, 10 to 15% African American, 10% Asian and other, and then about 40-some% Caucasian. And that has shifted. Like I said, our Hispanic population has doubled. Number of mixed race students has also increased, as has Asian and other. So we're certainly more diverse. Also, something to consider is that our percentage of free and reduced lunch students is also up around 40%, and that's something that I don't think people,
Good.
like you said, Dr. Baker, I don't think people realize that, we do serve approximately half of our students are at risk. So.
That's really important to know.
yeah, which means the parents are making that sacrifice and investment to have their kid apply to city and then maintain that, because for them it's a goal for their kid to succeed and so forth. So that option says you're gonna do this and we're gonna figure it out. And so that's good. That's good to know. Thank you.
And to that end, one other piece that I'll note is that we do have there's programming that I'm putting in place to really support families who have maybe not had a college graduate, so first generation college attending students and their families. So we have a support program for those families, and that's run by actually a former city parent, Mary Copeland. She's done some programming. So she's at City, and we've been
Really?
funding her to come on in and support those families with the strategies and skills, and also to welcome them and make sure that everybody feels that there's somebody there to support them at City. So
Fantastic.
yeah, she's great resource. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I believe with that, we are adjourned.
Okay,
Did we?
that would be
Good.
fine.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.